Hey guys, it's October, which means it's spooky month, so I thought I would come around with a new makeup tutorial for you. This is going to be my Maleficent makeup that I did for a photo shoot a couple months back to go with my Maleficent costume that I worked on over the last year and a half or so. If you've seen my Curdle video that I did, that is the first part of the costume. I'll be doing this video to show you how I did the makeup for that, and then in the next video I'll be doing a little show and tell of the final garment with the overgown and the accessories. I unfortunately did not get enough video footage of that when I was making it, just because I ended up on a really strict deadline and lost track of what I was recording and what I wasn't, but I hope that I can show you enough of that to give you an idea of all of the cool little parts of the costume. It's one that I'm incredibly proud of, so I'll be really excited to show you that in the next video. But for this video, I am going to be showing you how I do my makeup for it. The look is kind of between live action and the animated. I do have green skin, so this is going to be partially a face painting tutorial, but it also isn't going to be strictly the Disney style with the pink lips and the cowl head and all of that. It's kind of striking a balance in the between to more match with my costume, which is an independent design that I made instead of copying either of the movies or any of the other Disney products that have her on them. I'm hoping to get this up before Halloween so that you guys can reference it if you have any face painting or makeup that you want to do for the holiday season, for the spooky times, but if I cut it really close, I do apologize. I am on my grad school deadlines. If you can see my dark circles right now, that is entirely because of grad school. I am in the process of writing my thesis at the moment, so I am really busy and very tired all the time. But I'm trying to make time for this, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. This is a pretty in-depth tutorial. There's a lot of steps, but I really enjoy it, and I think it's going to turn out really cool, and I'm going to be really excited to show it to you guys. So, without any further ado, step one, I need to get rid of these boys. And done! So for this look, I do like to shave half of my eyebrows off just so I can get a more dramatic eyebrow. You do not need to do this. You are totally welcome to block your eyebrows off with glue, or just leave them and shape them in however you want. This is personal preference for me. It just makes it easier, and I usually have bangs, so you can't see them half the time anyways when they're short like this. But for this look, I do also recommend, if you have like sideburns or anything like that, I would also recommend shaving those. I clean mine up all the way until they hit where my like natural long hair is, because I'll be wearing a lace front wig, and to glue that down, it just makes it easier if you don't have all of that stuff around there. But like I said, if you want to leave it, it's totally fine. This is just personal preference. It makes it easier for me. With that being said, we're going to move on to our base. For this, I'm just using a moisturizing base. This is technically like a sunscreen, but I just want a little bit more moisturizer. I have already moisturized my face. I've used a I use a hyaluronic acid serum and a regular moisturizer before I do any of this. If you've watched my carrot makeup tutorial that I posted a little while back, it is really important when you're doing face paint that involves grease paint or anything that involves setting your face down like really, really carefully and with a lot of powder, that you moisturize the crap out of your face first, because that powder is going to suck out every ounce of moisture in your skin. So you want to set up a really good base before you do that to make sure that your skin isn't like dying afterwards. And I know that my chair is super creaky. I apologize. This is in the second floor of my house. I live in a townhouse, and it one is already hard enough to get chairs up and down the stairs, but this chair is very comfy, even though it is very creaky, and it is extremely heavy, so I don't want to carry it up or down the stairs. So instead, we're just going to have to deal with a little bit of a creaky chair, and I hope that you will forgive me. That being said, we're just finishing up the base, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Next step is going to be putting on your foundation, or basically whatever color skin you're trying to make yourself. For me, I'm using a combination of Mehron Clown White Light, which I used in my carrot video. You've already seen how to use that. If you want a pure white base for like a clown look or like a ghost or something like that, I'd recommend you go watch that video. But if you want a look that involves color, this is going to be a better bet for you. So I use a combination of that and then a Krylon paint stick. This is color 511. This is a more cool tone green. I really wanted a cool tone green for this to better evoke that kind of pallid look that she has in the animated movie. So I was pretty picky about this. If you don't care as much and you just want a green, there's tons of other ones that are a little less difficult to get a hold of than this. The Mehron line also has paint sticks that work great too. And if you want to try something else out, you're more than welcome to. All of my products are just suggestions. And as a reminder, all of my products are listed down in the description if you need a quick reference for what I was using. So for the foundation step, you're going to need a couple things that are not usually things you'd probably need for just regular old makeup or foundation. I recommend you put down some sort of plastic or paper towels or something like that, because this can get really messy and can get everywhere, and the last thing you want to do is have to clean it up off of all of your stuff. So I've set down a little plastic bag here to rest my stuff on just to make it easier for myself. I'm gonna roll up my sleeves, and then you're gonna want a metal palette or some sort of little plastic thing. You could use a Tupperware lid if you want. I have this from a previous product, but just something smooth and clean that's going to be easy for you to wash later and easy for you to use now. This is going to be what we're mixing our paint on, because both of these products are not quite the color I need. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of both of them and mix them together and use that as my base. For my body and for my hands, I've got a leotard and gloves, so I'm trying to get in the same range as those. It doesn't have to be exact if there's not a line where they exactly meet. So for me, on my photo shoot, I painted all the way down and just wore these gloves. But now I've got a leotard that comes up to the neckline, and then that neckline will be covered with a chain, so that'll also hide that seam a little bit, but we're trying to get as close as we can. If you have a face paint that's already the color you want and you don't feel like you need to mix it, that's totally fine. Go for it. Skip this step, move on to the next part. This is just for people who are trying to get a color that they can't get prepackaged in a bottle. So what I do is I take my stick, and this actually has a little bit of face paint left over from before, so I'm gonna wipe that off first. So I'm starting clean. I should have done this before when I finished my makeup, but you know, when do cosplayers ever do things in the right order? And then I am going to scrape off some of this using the back of a paintbrush, like so. And you'll probably want a decent amount of this, that way you don't have to mix it multiple times. This is going to kind of mess up your paint stick, and I do apologize about that, but things aren't meant to stay good forever. So just take your face paint from that, put it on your palette, and then you're gonna wipe off the paintbrush and repeat the same step with your other color. In this case, I'm gonna do the white. It doesn't compromise the integrity of the paint or anything. It's just digging a little bit of product out. So now I've got both of them, and I am just going to mix them together using the back of this paintbrush. And we're just trying to get an even consistency and color between the two of them without any streaks. All right, so once you've got your base, it is time to start painting it on your face. You're gonna wanna figure out how low you need to take this. For me, I'm going to be taking it right around to my neckline, right around the décolletage, because the leotard should come up to about here. I wanna make sure there's a little bit of overlap there just so it doesn't show through. But if you're wearing a turtleneck or something, you might only need to come up to here, so on and so forth. Or if you're doing a mask kind of look, you only need to come to the jawline. So just figure out where you're going and then paint from there. I am using a fluffy brush. This is the e.l.f. foundation blurring brush. I recommend a denser brush for this, just because it helps get the product onto the face a little bit better. So the process is going to be that we're going to paint this on our face with the brush, and then using a sponge, we're going to smooth out the product after it's already been put on. I recommend doing this because it helps with your coverage, and in general it just makes it a little bit easier to get everything on before you start worrying about blending it together. In this step, you're going to want to take it up into the hairline and down onto the jaw and onto the ears. I don't recommend getting it inside the ears unless you're really committed, but definitely get it onto the earlobe at least, since that might peek out. And then you're also going to want to make sure you're leaving the eye area mostly unpainted, because you're going to be taking lighter color into that area in a minute, and you don't want to have to double up on that. If you've ever done white face paint and then you're doing this, you're gonna notice that this is a lot easier to get coverage on. Basically any color that you put in your makeup is going to make it show up better, and you're gonna have to fight less with it. The other thing I want to caution you about is make sure you wear clothes that you can get off easily, that don't require you to pull it over your head really closely, because that is a quick #1 way to accidentally ruin your face makeup. So I'm gonna stop here for now so I can work on my face a little bit before I take it any further down. I'm gonna tuck in my cardigan here so it doesn't bump into the face paint. So next step, first wipe your hands off because they inevitably have gotten messy. And then I would take a paper towel or some other kind of cloth and wipe around your lips to clean those off. It's occurring to me I kind of look like old Greg right now, so that's fun. So the next step is going to be taking some more of the Clown White Light, and we're going to use this as our highlight shade, and we're going to go around this part of the eye with it. So I am going to go right over my eyebrows with the face paint. I'm leaving my eyelid space open for now because it's going to be easier to put eyeshadow on there if there's no face paint, and then we'll blend the eyeshadow into the face paint to give it a more seamless look. But I am leaving that space mostly open just to help give that eyeshadow a little bit of a better chance. I am going to wipe off my brush. If you are bothered by mixing products, you're welcome to use a different brush for this process or something else. But I am just gonna wipe mine off, and then I'm going to swirl it into the Clown White Light and dab that on under my eyes. We're gonna take that down onto the triangles of our cheeks, much like beauty YouTubers a la 2014. And by bouncing it, we're already starting to see a little bit of a blend between the products, which is one of the other reasons why I love Clown White Light. It just blends better with like cream stick products compared to the original Clown White. And I am going to go on the bridge of my nose with it for a little bit more highlight there, up into the center of my forehead, and then right along the tops of my cheekbones on either side. I've got a pretty prominent chin, so I don't really feel the need to highlight it a lot, but just for posterity, I am gonna add a little bit right there. It is important that you build back in the shadows and highlights onto your face, otherwise painting your face one color is going to give you really strong like moon face, where everything just looks like the same shade and very flat. Don't rely on your natural contours to come through face paint, because they rarely do. And then while we're here, we are going to also do a little bit of contouring just to set the stage. I also do a powder contour, but I like to do a little bit with the paint stick as well, just to set a good base, and it makes it easier later on. So we're going to take that paint stick and we're going to draw directly under the face, under the cheekbones, around the temples, and at the nose. For me, I focus most of my attention on the cheekbones since the temples are going to get partially covered up by my wig anyways, and the nose is such a small area, and I've got a pretty strong nose bridge already, so it doesn't need that much work. It's more just reinforcing what's already there. But if you feel like you need more in certain spots than others, go for it. Do whatever suits you best. Now you might notice that I'm drawing my cheekbone lines very high up on my face, and that is on purpose. I am trying to elevate my cheekbones as much as possible. If you place the highlight and shadow further down where they want to like naturally sit, it often drags your face down more than anything else. Alright, and now we're going to take our sponge and blend everything out. And this is just very basic, straightforward kind of blending. I like to use the sponge with one side for the contour and then flip it and use the other side for the highlighter. That way I don't mix the colors too much. And we're not going for super duper duper intense shaping at the moment. We're just trying to get that basic line there. And then we'll go in with eyeshadow or whatever kind of contour color you want to use later. And we'll carve it out a little bit more strongly. One thing that is going to be a little bit tricky here is the inner corner. I recommend going ahead and using your sponge to bring the face paint into that inner corner, just because it can be more difficult to try and blend that with eyeshadow later. And you often don't need like super intensive coverage on the inner corner of the eye anyways. But if you do get it out farther on the eyelid, I do recommend like wiping that off before you do your eyeshadow. And then if you want, you can turn it to one of the areas that doesn't have any makeup on it and use that to just blend out the rest of the face. You don't need to go super hard on this. I just like to give it a once over to make sure that there's not any funny little streak points or spots where pores are showing up real bad. This just helps to smooth everything out. Really want to make sure that we get any creases under the eye dealt with, because those can be big old pain in the butt once you've set your makeup down. So pay extra good attention to those first before anything else. So now I've basically got my whole face. I'm going to wipe off the primary part of my eyelid. Do this gently so you don't hurt your eyelids or irritate anything. And then I have just remembered that I should probably contour my neckline. So I'm just going to go in at my jawline, same as I did with my cheekbones. You don't want to take this shadow up onto your face too much. You just want to blend that edge right along the jawline. If you bring it up onto the face, it is going to make it look like your head is smaller, which can look a little funny. Okay, next step is going to be setting the face now that we've got basically our base covered. So I use Neutral Set, and I use this specifically because it's a non-colored powder, so it's not going to affect the shade, but it's also not going to give me an insane amount of flashback, ideally. For my white face paint, I use Super White, which is great if you want more coverage, but if you're working with a color like this, you generally don't want something that's going to affect the color like that. So I use Neutral Set, but if you want, you can use any sort of store-bought translucent powder as long as it doesn't have like a skin tone to it. I don't recommend you use one that has like a flesh tone. If you want to use something like that, use something like this e.l.f. powder that's completely translucent. It'll look kind of white in the container. Though a lot of these can have flashback, fair warning, especially if you use a lot of them for something like setting your face for face paint. So be warned that if you're going to be in a lot of flash photography, those might not work out the best for you. But that being said, I'm going to take this powder and I'm going to tap out a pretty hearty amount of it just onto another part of my plastic. And then I am going to take a little powder puff like this and just dip it in that and get it fully covered, and I'm going to cover my entire face in this powder. The reason moisturizing your face at the beginning is so important is because of this step and how much powder we're about to use, because it is a lot of powder. You basically want so much powder on your powder puff that your skin does not touch the powder puff. It just touches the powder. And then I am going to switch over from using the powder puff to the sponge, because I have found that the sponge with its little tapered tip like this can help navigate those creases a little bit better than a powder puff will. Double check that you don't have any creases around your eyes or on your nose, because once you set these down, it is like game over. There's no going back unless you wash the whole thing off and start again. So take your powder and dip 360 of the little point in it like this. It should be all the way around. And what you're going to do is place this in the inner corner of your eye and then just stamp it in. Then you're going to want to pick up a little bit more and then go on the under part of your eye. I know it's really hard to do this without squinting or blinking, but as much as you can, try and keep your eye completely neutral. That way your eye doesn't crease up and your powder either sets the creases that you have or prevents the powder from getting in those creases, which will then make them crease later. And I just like to go ahead and bring up the powder onto my nose at this point, since I'm already here. And if you're thinking, gee, that's a lot of powder, you're right, it is. But you are painting grease and cream onto your face, so it takes an actual miracle to get this stuff to not move around, and that miracle is in the form of Neutral Set by Nye. And then I'll set under my chin and my little earlobes as well, just to prevent those from bleeding or going up onto my face or anything like that. But I will leave my neck for now unset, just so I can have it be workable later when I need to paint more of my neck. Once you've set something, you can't really go back over it again. So having this little bit of barrier between the work area and the set area is good. You're just gonna wanna leave this for a little bit to set. Don't leave it on for too long. You're not trying to, you know, actually like bake your face, but give it a second to set in and settle and breathe and all of that. And if you notice any areas that need more powder or what have you, go in and touch those up. I like to do what's called a touch test, or what I call a touch test, which is basically you touch your face, and if you feel anywhere that's still sticky, you need powder there. Like right under my lip, for example. So I am just going to brush this off now. And for this, you can just use any big fluffy brush. Use a gentle hand. Don't use swirling motions because those might affect the coverage. I'm just going to use a regular big fluffy brush like I use for powder. It also helps if you pick up just a little bit of the powder you used to set on the brush. That way it's not trying to take off that powder. It's just trying to neutralize what's there that's too much. So I'm just going to start at the edges. And I use sweeping motions, not swirling motions. And ta-da! Our base is set and we're ready to move on to the next step. So you can go one of two ways at this point. You can either do your eye makeup or you can finish your face base first and then do your eye. But I do things out of order and I'm impatient, so I'm gonna move on to my eye makeup. So for this costume, I'm doing a pretty dramatic sort of eye look. It's going to be a lot of black, a lot of dark green. What it's going to start with is I'm going to build a basic base in a color that matches my eye so everything blends a little bit better, and then I'm going to start building up dark colors on top of that. I'm going to go for something that looks kind of like a halo eye, but I've never actually learned how to do a halo eye properly, so I don't know if this counts and I don't want to call it something that it's not, but it's going to be in that same kind of zone of dark on the outside and then lighter towards the middle, which makes the eyes look a little bit almost cartoony and like there's a shine there, and I really like the way it looks and it adds a lot of drama. So I just remembered before I do my eye makeup, I'm gonna go put my contacts in. It's always good practice to put your contacts in before you do your makeup. Generally you should do it before you put on any of your makeup, but I forgot. So I am going to go swap those in. I've got a couple different options I've done in the past. I do like snake eye lenses, or I just do a colored contact. Snake eye lenses can be a little bit harsh in the eyes and harder to put your makeup on over top of when you're wearing them. So sometimes I'll cheat and wait until the end to do those, but I don't really recommend that. So I'm gonna go put some contacts in and I will be right back. Okay, we're back. So today I decided to just go with a yellow contact. I like to do yellow tones because they contrast the green and they have that kind of unearthly look to them. For the photo shoot, I did use like slit eye contacts, but those are really hard to see out of and not that comfortable. So for today's video, I opted to just put these in because they are far, far, far comfier and much more pleasant to be in than those contacts. So without any further ado, I'm going to move on to the eyeshadow. So for this look, I'm going to be using two eyeshadow palettes. I'm going to be using my big old magnetic palette, and then I'm also going to be using the Take Me Back to Brazil palette from BH Cosmetics, just because it's got a nice array of colors that I can't get in my eyeshadow palette here, because there's no more room. So to start with, I am going to put a green shade, just like a neutral green, over most of my eyelid to help it blend out with the rest of my face. And I'm going to be putting this on a pretty big brush. This is actually a concealer brush, just because I'm trying to cover so much area and I don't need it to be super precise. So I'm just going to pick up that neutral green. I recommend using a matte for this. I don't know if mine's matte, but it's close enough, so whatever. And then I'm going to start on the center of the eye. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. First, I'm going to prime my eyes. I am putting the cart before the horse. I'm gonna prime my eyes first because you want good color coverage on this. You can use whatever eyeshadow primer you'd like. You can use a colored one, you can use a neutral one, whatever, just, you know, use something. And try and keep this into only the area of your eyelid, because once you start trying to mix it with the face paint, it is going to blend weird and not look great. Now that I've done that, now I am going to put a matte middle tone green eyeshadow on my eyelids. I've gotten that on the bigger part of my eyelid, and then I'm going to take a lighter matte green and blend around the outer edges to help it soften into the rest of the face. So we've got a very, very generalized green eyeshadow on the upper eyelid. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start building up our black eyeshadow. And this is really scary for me. I don't usually work with black eyeshadow because it is very dark and very intense. But Maleficent is a dark and intense character, so we're gonna make it work. So to start out with, I'm going to swap out my slightly fluffier blending brush for a smaller one. And we're going to start by packing it onto the outer third of the eye. And where we hit the edge, we're going to try and keep it in a swept up motion. We're trying to create a cat's eye shape without eyeliner here. And I find that works often if you pack the eyeshadow on first and then blend it upwards like this to get that shape. Find your best, most blendable, opaque black eyeshadow, and let's get to work. I'm just taking it right up into the crease, to the edge of the crease, like that. You don't want to take it into the middle of the eye because that's where the halo eye is going to be. And if you get it in there, it's going to be a lot harder to get that bright tone that you want later on. So now that I've laid that out, I am going to take another blending brush that does not have the black on it, so it won't take the color too far. And I am going to blend the edges of this into my crease a little bit right here at the top, and then at the edges of the outside to soften the shape. If it helps, you can take a little bit of that green eyeshadow you were using earlier and use that to blend out the shape a little bit. And then with the black eyeshadow, we're going to do that sweeping up motion that I was just talking about, which kind of creates that line going out, and then we're going to blend the top of that line back into the black eyeshadow. And then just swap between the brushes as needed. When you get a good shape, stop using the black eyeshadow brush and switch to the other one to blend it out a little bit, and then you can just ping back and forth as needed to blend the two of them. And then I am taking mine up pretty far because I've got slightly hooded eyes, so when I look at you, if I keep it just in my crease, it's going to completely disappear. And by shaving off my eyebrows right in here, I've made myself more eyelid space than I would have naturally. Okay, now we've got one eye, I'm gonna do the other eye. I generally recommend going back and forth as you do your steps. That way they stay even and symmetrical and you don't get all the way to the end of one eye and realize that you don't remember how to do it on the other eye. So, same process, just on the flip side. Okay, so we got a good start here. We got our outer part, so now we're gonna work on the inner part. And this is a little bit tricky, so you're gonna wanna use a very careful hand and not go too fast or too big. We're going to place the black of the eyeliner or the eyeshadow in the inner corner here, right on this inner third of the eye. We're trying to not bring it down into the corner here, and we're also trying to not bring it up into the curve of the eyebrow, like the eyebrow bone into the nose, like right here where that curve is. We're trying to avoid both of those, so keep this very centralized, very tight. You don't want to go too far. So now we're going to swap back over to the other eyeshadow brush. Just blend the edges of this, blend the top into the crease. And if you feel like you want to connect those two black chunks on your eye through the crease, that is totally okay. You can do that. That's going to change the shape of your halo eye a little bit, but that's okay. It's just going to look a little bit different. I personally kind of like the look, so I am going to do that. And then on the inner corner, when you blend it, don't blend out towards the inner corner, blend inwards towards the black so that you're bringing that color inwards rather than outwards. That's gonna help contain it a lot better. As you might have noticed, I am leaving the center of the eyelid blank, and that is on purpose. That is where our halo eye is going to be. So the next step is going to be cleaning out that little halo eye bit in the middle. Right now it's functional, but it's missing a little bit of spice. So we're going to add another layer of like cream product. You can use whatever you want here. Cream eyeliners are a good base, or another layer of primer, eyeshadow primer, or you can use like a glitter glue, pretty much whatever you want here, but something that's going to help carve out that little bit in the middle. So for me, I think I'm going to start out with a little bit of a green color corrector just to clean up that shape a little bit. Right now I have accidentally gotten a little bit of black too far in, so I want to make sure the shape is really nice and clean before I go in and do any work on it. I'm just going to take a little brush. This is technically an eyeliner brush, but I've used it for concealer in the past, so I'm not super picky about it, and I'm just going to gently place this over the area that I want to highlight on my eyelid. So we've got that inner area cleaned up, and now you can pick whatever color you want to go in that area, but I recommend a fun, interesting looking shimmer that's lighter than the rest of your eye makeup. I think I am going to go with a light coat of a white with a gold shift. I think that'll look really pretty. So I'm going to start by just picking some of it up on my finger, and then I'm going to tap it over where I have laid out my halo eye. And then we're just going to blend the edges of it with a clean, fluffy brush. Just a little bit. You don't want to bring this out into the black, but you do want to blur the edges of a little bit. And then go in as many times as you want to build up the color. I think I'm also going to mix a little bit of a silvery champagne shade in here. And then for the last step, I think I'm actually going to use a little bit of a highlighter that I really like. And now we're going to go back in and re-darken up some of the black areas that might have gotten a little bit faded, build up that color, and then bring it down onto the bottom lash line. So just be careful to not bring it into this part of the eye here and keep it on this outer third. We're going to start from the outer part because we're going to try and keep this shape going and work our way in. And I think our last step is putting a little bit of a highlight on the inner corner, and then we'll move on to eyeliner. So for this, you can use any shade you want. I am actually going to go in with kind of a bright gold color as a contrast to the rest of this look. For that, I'm just going to use just a bright mid-tone kind of warm brassy gold. And now we're gonna move on to eyeliner. So eyeliner is one of those things that I have to concentrate really, really hard on to not mess up. So I'm not going to talk once I start doing it, so I'm going to go ahead and explain it to you ahead of time. That way you can see what the heck I'm doing. So basically, our eyeliner is going to be a two-part look. It's going to be a wing on the outside and then a small, I don't know what they're called, but like a little tiny wing on the inside too, basically. So we're gonna do our outer wing. It's gonna be a small one since we've already got this big black eyeshadow thing going on. We're just gonna do a little wing on the outside, draw our full eyeliner on, and then we're gonna add a little tiny wing towards the bottom. What you wanna do is follow the natural line of your eye. So however that goes down, just follow that a little bit, wing that out, and then bring it back in. And we're just going to bring it into our tear duct area, and we're not going to keep it going from there. It's gonna end with that tear duct. So now that I've explained that, I'm going to attempt to do it and not mess it up. So fingers crossed. Okay, eyeliner is done. I went a little bit harder on the inner corner than I meant to, but it's fine. It's fine. It's dramatic. It'll be fine. So now I am just going to pop on some mascara and we'll keep trucking along. All right, so the next step is going to be my eyebrows. I'm going to draw these on, starting with my natural little bits here, and then I am planning on taking it up into an arch and then bringing it back down. For this, I'm doing a pretty dramatic sort of eyebrow shape just to add a little bit of drama to this and make it more interesting, and also because I think that makes it look more mature. So we're gonna do that next. I'm just gonna use basic black eyeshadow for this, draw it in, and see where it goes. So the shape is never the same 2 days in a row, but whatever it'll be fine. eyebrows are done. The top half of my face is looking very intense, so let's try and fix up the rest of it. We are going to go in and do our contouring now. Yes, I did forget. We're gonna do it now. So that is just going to involve finding a darker green to bring out the cheekbones and the neckline, and then highlighting a little bit around the cheeks. We're gonna start with that brush that we used to pack on the main shade onto our eyelids, because we're going to be using green again, and we just need a little fluffy brush like this to do so. If you have a cooler toned green, I would recommend you use that first. Use a light hand. I'm going to start with this one right here. So we're gonna start cheekbones, very light hand, and then work up from there. And then once I've put in some color, I'm gonna take a big fluffy brush, different than our powder brush, but you know, same kind of vibe, and then just try and blend that out a little bit more, soften it up. And now we're just going to go in a little bit more and clean up that nose contour a little bit. We are going to use a smaller fluffy brush. You can use a blending brush for this, just to get us a little bit more precision on that. We're going to bring it up from in the crease right here all the way down the nose, and then try and kind of point the bottom a little bit. Okay, so I just took a noodle break, but I am back now, so I'm going to keep going with my lipstick. I realized I had not eaten anything today, so I had a little snacky, but we're going to keep moving now. The next step is going to be lips, now that I have eaten, and I'm just going to be using a black lipstick for this. I am going to be slightly underlining my lips compared to where I naturally do it. We're going to go for that. I just do it straight out of the bullet. I'm not fussy about trying to do anything fancy with like lip liner or anything. It's a liquid lipstick, so it shouldn't go anywhere anyways, but I'm gonna touch up the top of my lip with some face makeup just to make sure I'm covered, and then we're gonna go in. And then to accent this, I'm gonna add a little bit of a purple eyeshadow right into the middle. You don't need to do this. This is just a fun little thing that I like to do because it ties in some of the original purple from her lip look in the movie. It's a little hard to see on camera, but I swear it's there in person. And I think our last step is to just put on some fake eyelashes, and then we'll move on to covering the rest of the neck and putting the wig on. For this, I use a like semi-natural eyelash. I don't go for anything ultra dramatic. I'm not trying to do a drag look despite everything about this. But I also don't want something so natural that it isn't going to show up at all. So I am going to use these today, but you're welcome to use whatever kind of eyelash you want. Dealer's choice, really. These are just the ones that I have around that I like and I think will work well for this. And then for eyelash glue, I am using House of Lashes. This is my go-to eyelash glue for pretty much eternity. It lasts through conventions, it lasts all day, it's super sticky, it's easy to work with. Okay, the face is pretty much done, so we're going to move on to the hair and the body. To start with, I'm going to go ahead and put my hair up in an actual wig cap instead of just having this headband on to get it out of the way. And then I am going to move on to painting my neck. Okay, now that I've got my wig cap on, there are a couple steps that I need to do next. First one is that for this look, I do horns instead of like a hinnin or something. So to rig that up, I have a headband that I've sewn magnets onto on the underside, like this. And these are super duper duper strong neodymium, I think is how you pronounce it, magnets. So when I put this on, I've got magnets on the horns as well, and they'll just stick right through the wig. It doesn't tend to budge, but it's more for just extra safety to pin it in just in case. You never know. I am going to start doing the preparatory phase for gluing down my wig. So I have a lace front for this look because I think it looks better than a hard front with bangs or something like that for this character. And you can use wig glue, you can use weave glue, I know some people use eyelash glue, you can use whatever you want, but my personal preference is this stuff right here. This is the Got to Be Glued spiking gel, but it is super duper sticky, and it's called Got to Be Glued because it's basically a glue. You've probably seen the spray can glue around that cosplayers love to use, and I do use that, but for this specific purpose, I guess, I use this gel because it's easier to apply and I think it works a little bit better. It's a little bit stickier for longer in my opinion. So it works with face paint. Let's get that out of the way first. In my experience, I haven't had any issues with it. However, there are some steps that you have to take to kind of make it work the best that you can. To start out with, you take a layer and you're just going to put it along the entire hairline where you plan on sticking the wig and let that dry. And you're going to do that 3, 4, maybe even 5 times if you want to. The more times you do it, the better bond you're gonna get and the better chance your wig is of lasting all day. This is also the time when I slick back any little bits or pieces that might show up under the lace to make sure they stay in place as well. So right around the hairline and then my little widow's peak up here at the top. And you want to make sure this dries between each layer. So do one layer, let it dry completely, do something else if you need to, and then move on to the next layer. In between layers of this glue, while I wait for it to dry, I'm just going to go ahead and work on my neck and my décolletage area. Okay, so my neck is powdered, I've done the whole front and back, I've got my second layer drying. I am going to move on to some other little bits and bobs that I need to do for this. I have a pair of just like rubber over the ear elf ears that I am going to paint green with my face paint and powder for this costume. This is technically the second time I've done this. I put it on and then rinse the whole thing off to wear for a different costume. It does leave the tiniest green stain, but it's not really noticeable unless you're looking for it. Painting with face paint on rubber like this is not a permanent solution. It will rub off. Once I paint them, I'm going to have to be like super careful to make sure that they don't get scuffed or anything because it'll just rub off the second you put any sort of pressure on them. So this is not a permanent solution. One day I'm probably gonna like paint these with acrylic or something, but until then, this works okay as a stopgap sort of solution. Okay, so update. I feel very disorganized in this video and I apologize. My bodysuit is a little bit off colored. This was gonna be the first time I was gonna wear it and it is just not quite the color I needed it to be. I think I'm gonna need to over dye it. So instead I am going to go back to my roots and just paint my whole entire upper body instead. So I've swapped into the chemise that I'm going to be wearing for the costume so I can get an idea of where the neckline is going to be, and then I'm just going to paint to those edges. So I am going to do that now. Okay, so now that I have greened myself, it is time for me to put on my wig. I have done 3 layers of the Got to Be Glued so far on my head, so what I am about to do is going to be basically my final layer. I am going to put a layer on in the same places and give it just a second to get tacky, and then I'm going to put my wig on top of that and the tackiness will stick the lace down. For reference, this is my wig. I styled her myself. She's got green beads woven throughout the braids in the back and a widow's peak in the front. This is semi-inspired by historical styles, but it is not historically accurate to any extent. Most of it's based off of portraits, which were likely fantasy themselves even during the time period. So it is more about the vibes than anything super accurate, but she's very top heavy in the back, so I kind of have to work to get her onto my head. So we're gonna go slowly. I'll probably start with some got to be up here at the front to get her stuck on, and then move down the head and add more as I'm able to stick her in place. Okay, so the wig is on. I could leave it here if I wanted to, but as a little bit of extra security and to make sure that my little pink ear part is not showing, I'm going to take a little bit of the Got To Be Glued on my jawline right here and then just stick some hair on top of it to get it to sit closer to my face. It feels really icky. I kind of hate doing it, but it makes it look a lot better, and I don't have to worry about accidental costume slips. So I do it anyways. Okay guys, this is pretty much it. This is the finished look. I just have to put on my costume and my horns and all of my accessories, and then I'll be done. But I am going to show you how I do that and what process that looks like in the next video. So I'll show you some videos of the final look, and then stay tuned for that whole shebang of how I'm going to get into all of this. It is quite the process. There's a lot of layers, so I'm really excited to share that with you guys and show you all of the fun details from the costume. So stay tuned, and I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.